All right, well, thank you everyone for attending our fiscal year 2023-2024 budget presentation. My name is Dominique Romo. I'm the city manager here in Escalon. This is Sopeep Don Carry-On, our finance director, who assisted in and did majority of our PowerPoint presentation. We do have some new faces here. Everybody knows Chief Gustavo Flores, and then we also have a new face to the group who started today. This is Jalen French, our Community and Development Services Manager. And so we're welcoming him first day on the job and has budget presentation trainings now. So we'll go ahead and get right to it. So if you can go ahead and go to the next page. So staff is presenting the city budget for the 2023-24 fiscal year. The city council has set and staff has implemented a clear and consistent policy of fiscal conservativeness. So council has directed staff to maintain a fiscally responsible approach to providing local services and to present the city budget in a straightforward and understandable manner. So therefore, the city council and the city manager have agreed to adhere to the following budget objectives in preparing this year's budget: to deliver a balanced operating budget using minimal reserves, to maintain the current level of service to the community, to incorporate the council manager goals, and to keep the city's budget process open and easily understood. So the role of the city council as the elective legislative body, they have the overall responsibility in setting policy for the scope, direction, and financing of the city's services, and the council establishes local laws and policy that is administered and implemented through staff. The council is also responsible for establishing land use policies through general plan and zoning regulations upon recommendation by Planning Commission. Under the council manager form of government, the council provides policy direction to the city manager, who's responsible for administering those operations. And in setting policy, the council works closely with citizen advisory commissions and committees, considers staff information and recommendations, and receives comments from interested parties and the general public. So this is our council, who is also seated before you. We have our mayor, Dave Bellinger, our mayor pro tem, Andrew Hagan, and council member Jeremy Engel, Melinda Walker, and Sean Stroman, current Escalon City Council. So the city council staff goals for 23-24 are basically continuing our staff goals from last year's budget, which was 22-23. A lot of these are still in process. The first one was to pursue senior housing development, which we currently still have listed as a goal. Continue efforts for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, otherwise known as our modernization project, to assess recreation programs to meet the community needs, and to explore areas of funding for SSJID surface water connection, and also to increase efforts to address code enforcement requests. And those can be updated or modified at council, whatever council is looking to do in the future, we can update those. Regarding fiscal policies, in order to achieve the general goals of the community, it's prudent for the city to have in place adopted fiscal policies to guide the city administration and city council through decision-making process. So these policies are operational efficiencies, policies on voter-approved revenues, policies on our reserves, which I'll point out the council's current goal is to have a 33% of the general fund operating expense in a reserve account by annually committing the funds necessary to achieve that objective. And then also infrastructure, providing sufficient routine maintenance each year to avoid deferred maintenance backlog. And then also employee development to attract and retain employees. And then economic development to pursue aggressively businesses to add to the city's economic base. And particularly to generate sales tax and sales increment revenue, and also promote mixes of businesses that contribute to a balanced community. We also have fiscal policies related to new services, construction of new facilities, and fiscal management. Regarding fiscal management, we're looking at trying to maximize revenues by utilizing grants from other agencies to the fullest extent possible. To charge fees for service that reflect the true cost of providing such services and review fee schedules on a regular basis. to fully account for costs of the enterprise operation and avoid any subsidy of the general fund, and to charge enterprise funds their fair share of the cost of city support services, and to maintain accurate accounting records to keep the city manager and council informed of financial conditions at all times. And then we also file quarterly reports of investments that adhere to both state law and city policy, and which follow reasonable and prudent guidelines for investments of the city's idle cash. So what is the city's budget? The city's budget is a planning document that details how the city will pay for a certain level of service over a specific period of time, and in our case, it's always been 1 year. It is also developed by staff based on the policy directions from the council, and then reviewed by the public and city council, and eventually adopted by the city council. That adoption is currently scheduled for the August 7th meeting. Staff then implements the city budget over the course of the fiscal year, which begins every July 1st through June 30th. So a municipal budget is generally a combination of narratives and spreadsheets which utilize terms like general funds, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, debt service funds, capital improvements program, reserve, expenditures, and revenues. So these funding types, we give a brief description of them. So the general fund is used to account for money that is not legally required to be accounted for in another or specific fund. The city operates one general fund. Enterprise funds are used to account for self-supporting activities that provide services on a user charge basis. So the city currently has 4 enterprise funds: water, sewer, stormwater, and public transit. Special revenue funds are used to account for activities paid for by taxes or other revenue sources in which the expenditure of those funds are restricted by the city, state, or federal government. And then debt service funds, which are used to account for general long-term debt principal and interest. The city operates 2 debt service funds for the payment of the Civic Center and Community Center renovations and for citywide energy projects. So how does our city budget process work? The process of developing and adopting a city budget begins and ends with the city council. As elected representatives of the community, the council provides direction to staff through policy directives, such as council manager goals, that maintain the most effective and efficient balance between desired services and appropriate costs. Staff annually prepares a proposed budget to meet the council's policy direction and goals. Staff proposed budget is then presented to council and the public at a workshop for dialogue, questions, and input. And staff makes any revisions as directed by council and returns the proposed budget back to council for one last review and formal adoption at a city council meeting before July 1st, typically. In this case, we are running a little bit behind, which we did check with council on moving forward with that. Does anybody have any questions so far on this budget presentation? It's kind of just generalizing it of sorts currently.
I got a question.
Sure.
Does the city ever intend to pay back its inter-fund loans that's taken out over the years? Or those just things?
So that would be a question. I mean, we're currently making payments on that. I don't know if you want to explain our payments.
No, because it's the development impact fee, it's not generating any revenues.
Okay.
If there's constructions going on for specific funds in the defer impact fund fees, then you can use.
That's not the question. In 2013, got $1.55 million paid escrows in this building in City Hall. They did that through 3 inter-fund loans. Food fund, transportation, and public works. Those were to be paid back over 20 years, so that plus interest. Find out that the interest that's being paid is actually coming out of the funds that they took it from. So I don't know how you account for that as line item. But my question is the city ever going to pay that back to those funds?
So, I mean, the answer I could provide at this point in time is as staff, we haven't received that direction as of yet, but currently, if it's on that schedule, we're making what payments we've been budgeted to make in these adopted budgets. So I can look into it if you like.
Payments to those loans are the interest. The actual money, capital is still due. The interest is coming out of the in lieu fund, the transportation fund, and the public works fund. It's not coming out of the general fund to pay back those other funds. So it's just, you're just taking more money out of those funds to pay themselves back. Fine with numbers, and the question is there going to be at some point within the 20 years that the loan was set up, that those monies will be returned to those other line item funds?
At this point in time, I'm not absolutely sure, but we can definitely discuss that as a part of the budget cycle.
Because if you do intend to do that, then your actual general fund is less than what you're seeing. If you intend to pay it back, if you don't.
You had just stated that you haven't gotten direction on that yet. Is the current council aware that they need to provide direction in order for this payment to be?
We are aware of the interfund loan balances that are out there, yes.
And so is there a reason why direction has not been given?
Currently, it's a funding issue, and we haven't made it a priority to deplete the general fund. It's been brought up, and we are looking at options, and we've asked them to look into that, but we haven't got a solution for that at the current moment.
Where it becomes important is the in lieu fund. We're looking for senior housing, one of the goals of this budget, and it's been talked about, what are we gonna allow the developers to come in and provide senior housing? And one of the issues, or one of the ideas, is to give the $900,000 that's in the in lieu fund as incentive to the developer. There's not 900,000 in there. The city took out 800,000 for the debt service, again, the two buildings. So you got 80,000 in that fund. So you can't possibly use that as an incentive for a housing project for a developer unless you're going to come directly right out of the general fund for it. Again, paying it back.
Recognize the concerns and the problems we have there, yes.
It's an accounting thing, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious because it never shows up in any budgets or any audits.
Discussed it 2 or 3 months ago, I believe. That brought up some questions in regards to the in lieu of funds for a senior
That was our
project.
annual
We were
AB
talking-
1600 report.
Yeah, when we were looking at the senior fund and trying to work into that solution, because we do need that.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I have one quick question. The enterprise fund says, operate full enterprise funds, one being water sewer. And then you've got special revenue funds, things paid by taxes. Aren't we being charged taxes on our water fund? Or my water bill, I'm being charged special taxes. So how are you breaking that money up?
So on your water, on the residents' water bills, you're being charged a fee for the service, and then a flat base fee, and then a fee for additional service if you're over so many gallons of water. So fees are separate from taxes.
So you're saying we don't have a special tax?
No.
The special revenue fund, it's related to gas tax and SB1 money that's supposed to be utilized for streets and roads. And along with that, there are grant funds, kind of like SLESIF, supplemental law enforcement funds. So that's kind of like it's categorized in that area in special funds. There's also land maintenance districts, lighting and landscaping maintenance districts that's categorized into the special revenue funds category too. Because that's the section that you're looking at right now, right? The general fund enterprise special revenue?
Yes.
Yeah. So that special fund is made up of the lighting, landscape maintenance, gas tax, SB1 money, additional grants, cops and things like that.
Okay.
It's separate from sewer, water taxes, or any other taxes.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Whereas your water and sewer utility charges and fees would fall under enterprise funds because they're self-supporting on a user charge basis.
General fund, you mentioned is for money that's not accounted
Correct. Yes, no, that's a good way to describe it. And the general fund is essentially the fund, yes, where fees that aren't assigned specifically to a fund can be collected and can be utilized on a wider array of expenses, yes. Oh, thank you very much.
Monique, can I ask a question?
Sure.
It's kind of silly. It's a silly question, but I think it's important to ask. How were the city council and staff goals for fiscal year 23-24 established when this city council hasn't really set aside goals for this fiscal year?
So these are continuing goals from last year. All I've done is rolled them over for this year.
Okay,
And then I'd indicated when I went over this section that this can be revised by the council. So when that budget comes forward, that's the time that council should be discussing any other goals that they'd like added. But these are the goals that were, the council's goals that were established at the last budget cycle. And all of them are currently, they're not completed. They're still in process. And so I didn't want to remove any, and I will be providing a recommendation on ones that we can potentially add at that meeting. But it's totally council's discretion what modifications they want to make and what goals they would like to set for the new year.
okay.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the big picture, which is all of the funds.
Yeah, so there's a little typo on there where it indicates 22-23. It should reflect 23-24 instead. So for the fiscal year 23-24, the city is projecting citywide revenues in the amount of $13,919,962 in revenues, with total citywide expenditures of a little bit over $25 million. This resulting deficit is including both ongoing and one-time costs. So for the city of Escalon, the one-time activities are primarily those related to capital improvement projects and other activities that spans more than the current 12-month budget. So approximately $14.1 million is related to capital improvements. Additionally, about 600,000 are a combination of requests made by the departments. There were a couple of vehicles for public works that hasn't been purchased yet, so we're just carrying that forward. In addition to that, PD is requesting, I know it indicates $150,000 here, but it should read $218,000. They're requesting to replace $20,000 in handgun, one additional police vehicle that equates to about $95,000. There's $65,000 for handheld radio equipment, $30,000 for BRIM supports updates for City of Ripon Dispatch, and there's also computers replacement as well. In this proposed budget, I'm also including the unfunded accrual liability payment that the city is obligated to pay for, which is in the amount of $537,326. So if you look at the table to the right, it shows you kind of like a breakdown as to how that's allocated to the different departments. The table below that will show you an example of how unfunded accrual liability is calculated. So it looks at the entry age of someone that's about to retire. So they're projecting by the time someone retires, you know, all the employees, they're indicating it's $13 million, but then they also look at the market value assessments for it, which is close to $10 million right there, which creates that unfunded accrued liability amount of a little bit over $3 million. So instead of paying for the unfunded accrual liability at once, it's just amortized throughout the years, and we would get an actuarial reports from CalPERS that indicates the amount that we're supposed to pay every single year. So for example, when it comes to PD, they made an additional payment for it of $200,000. So when it comes to making the annual payments, it starts decreasing the balance that's supposed to be paid annually if they continue to add more payments to it. So overall, general fund operating capital expenditures is projected to be at about $5.8 million. So in the next slide, it just goes over all of the capital improvement projects identified by Public Works and our engineering department. For parks, you have $10,500 for streets. There's the various projects related to South McHenry Avenues. There's Main Street and bike pedestrian improvements. There's the First Streets improvements. For streets by itself, you're looking at capital improvements of about $5.9 million. For water, there's that well 1A construction that the city did reach out to the state revolving fund for a loan for in the amount of $1.35 million. So overall, the water construction in process is about $3.47 million. When it comes to sewer, with all these projects listed here, it equates to about $4.6 million. And this is a result of McHenry Trunkline Rehab Phase 2 that's planned to start this upcoming fiscal year.
So Dominique?
Yes.
Justin's indicating a new project here for Yosemite Avenue sidewalk replacement. Where is that?
It's currently not listed here.
It's right
or
underneath
is it here?
$37,250.
You mean, where is that, like physically?
Correct.
I know I have it printed out on I can't recall the area, but it's a smaller area, that's why it's lower in price. It's about 40,000. I can pull my account real quick and get it while she continues.
Okay.
Yeah, let me go grab that real quick. Go
I
ahead.
have some questions on this CIP.
Okay,
Can I ask you, or?
I'm not sure about, you can try, I don't know if I have the answer.
Well, I just think, I know we're doing a First Street beautification project, which I could be wrong, but I thought we were getting with grant money. And it looks here that we're doing First Street improvements for 1.3 million. Is this a different project? And if so, what part of First Street needs $1.3 million in?
That's what you're talking about right there. It's the beautification project. I know that it went to council about a couple of years ago where they indicated it's gonna cost about $1.3 million, and of that amount, $500,000 is gonna be funded by a grant through SJCOG for $500,000. So the excess amount, we're looking into kind of like the funding sources. So it's a discussion that we need to have in order to identify where the additional $800,000 is gonna come from. But part of it is being funded by Measure K, $500,000.
I understand, and that makes sense. However, wouldn't it be more factual to put $800,000 on here is what we're actually in need of, and that would change our overall total, because $500,000 of this we don't have to pay for, correct?
Yeah, but you still have to recognize the expenditures. When we get the revenue, it's gonna hit in the same account, so it offset, when you look at it at the end of the year, it still offsets to that difference of $800,000. But then when it comes to recognizing the revenue, the expenditures, you have to account for what's actually gonna occur, which is $1.3 million. You have to record the expenditures for that. I get what you're saying, there's that difference of $500,000, but you have to appropriately recognize the expenditures and then record the revenues in the appropriate place, revenues and expenditures.
And I did accounting for many years, so I understand the process. I'm not disputing that. I just don't understand why this doesn't reflect a potential offset of that amount, even possibly at the bottom, because this makes it look like 14.168 million is coming out of our pocket, when how many of these other projects listed here also have grants attached to them where we will be reimbursed for some or all of the funds?
Or the project won't even get off the ground, nothing.
Yeah.
That would be recognized in the revenue section, I would assume.
Yeah, it is recognized in the
Yeah.
revenue section, but then I feel like when it comes to expenditures, you have to recognize it for the actual
I
cost.
agree, yeah.
But then if you're looking at a financial statement, the income statement would identify, if you're solely looking at just Measure K by itself, if you're reviewing that financial statement section, you'll see that there's gonna be a net deficit of $800,000. I don't know if that makes sense.
Page.
Yeah.
So that,
I understand.
How many of these have been pushed forward and kicked down the road, and been kicked down the road where they have not got done? In other words, we say half, I probably bet at least half, have been kicked down the road several years. So is this just something we just keep, why not
I mean, so that would be council's decision.
I've always got a big box of chocolate, probably the biggest one you can find. But half these things on here have been kicked down the road for years and years and years.
That's
So
why,
why are we still reflecting these in a budget where we're not gonna do them in the first place?
I don't think it's necessarily we're not gonna do them, it's an attempt to get them done in a prioritization of projects. If they're not listed, they get lost in sight and never seen.
Sure.
And some of these funds have ongoing revenues going against them, and we get closer to the ability to actually pull the trigger and do the projects. If we don't have the visibility, then it's never gonna happen.
No, and I agree.
So I think that's what we're trying to do, is reflect that.
I see your point, and I agree. However, since we're in such a financial crisis in the first place, we can't afford to make up. We're looking at things that really, the First Street project, excuse me, Main Street. Didn't we just fix that? Didn't we just, I don't know if any of you were here before, but I think about, what, 8, 9, 10 years ago, something like that? We just did a bunch of work down there. We just did all those little flat things down there, we put all the stuff, everybody bought a brick or whatever it was, and we did all of that stuff. That was all $5 million. That was within 10 years. We just tore it all up 10 years ago.
We have a
Now
big,
tear it up again?
there's a
That
big
might-
presentation regarding that project, that we have money coming from SJ Cog. They're gonna be putting pathways, they're gonna put a restroom downtown for public restroom use, similar to what we have out at the community center, and a few other things along with some speed and sidewalks and whatnot to show speed
Bike
coming out of town,
lanes
bike lanes and whatnot.
Sidewalks on the park
Sidewalks, so
side.
there's a lot of information on that project. It's on our website, I believe, isn't it, Dominique?
I double checked.
Yeah.
Who's this chick? I'm sorry.
Semi Council of Governments.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I thought it was-
We actually obtained grant funding for that project. So that, we obtained grant funding for the Main Street Bike and Pedestrian Improvements Project.
Right.
And so that one is 100% funded through grants.
Oh, so why is it on our budget?
Negative than
But
1.2
we-
million, right?
We still have to account for it because it's a reimbursement process. And so we have to show that we're going to be paying it out and then going through a reimbursement process to get it back. So it has to be reflected.
And then we get reimbursed if they go through.
This one is going through. It's
not a wish
it's
list, it's
scheduled for
done.
October.
Right.
Yeah.
we think that this is Maine.
So you had asked about the Yosemite Sidewalk Avenue, or excuse me, Avenue Sidewalk replacement. And so that's the existing sidewalk along the north side of Yosemite Avenue and State Route 120. It's between the railroad tracks and Plaza Avenue, and it's all been damaged due to tree root upheaval. And so we're going to be pulling out those trees and fixing that damaged sidewalk and replace it with new sidewalk along that area.
So similar to what the gentleman was just talking about. I mean, I understand a lot of these are wish list items, but I know for a fact that there are more pressing items that we need to consider as a city within the city limits instead of carrying these wish list items. So how do we bring those to everybody's attention? I'll give you two good examples. Number one is we're talking about doing other sidewalk improvements. However, about a year ago, there was an elderly couple here that came before us that they were out walking and they tripped and fell, had to go to the ER, et cetera, and Justin, and the question was brought up and Justin said, well, we're in the process of doing a sidewalk survey. We'll have that sidewalk survey and that will give us our direction to move forward. I don't see any of those sidewalks included on this list. So why did we spend the time and the money and the resources to do that sidewalk survey if we're not doing anything with it? I think that should be a number one priority. Let's address our current sidewalks and there's one right in front of the library that I would say anybody that went to the beer tent this past weekend saw the big pink spray paint on the ground to notify people, don't trip over it. But are we addressing that here? So what? Are we gonna have pink colored sidewalks for the next 2 or 3 years until we address those concerns? So that's just one example. So we need to address the current sidewalk improvements before we start going through some of this 5-10-year wish list items. The other item, and I'm asking for feedback from other council members, is the potential for replacement of lighted crosswalks at Escalon Belota and Elizabeth and 120. So on Escalon Belota, right across from Dr. Hagan's office, we have residents currently that live in Heritage House that are too afraid to walk across Escalon Belota to go to the senior lunch program because they're afraid they're going to get hit by a car. Poor Dave Willis is standing out there volunteering his time, but guess what? Dave Willis almost got hit by a car. So we need to address that. Now we have Orlando's getting ready to open at Elizabeth and 120, and we were told a couple meetings ago by Justin that Caltrans ripped that lighted crosswalk off because it wasn't up to their code. Great. When are we going to replace it? Because we have a lot of folks from the south side of town are going to want to access Orlando's in the north side, crossing Highway 120. So why aren't we looking at more important immediate needs within capital improvement projects as opposed to creating a 5 or 10-year wish list?
Well, I think, I just want to respond to that because I think you missed the message earlier, man. That's what this is about, right? I mean, you kind of pushed for the dog and pony show. That's what you're being given. Now, if there's changes that want to be made, I don't think this is the meeting. You can give some input. I hope the public would give some input. But ultimately, it's going to be up to us to come back and recommend those changes, right? So I don't want to be rude, but that's all this is a presentation of a proposed budget working with the information that they had. So there's no way that your request could have been put into this presentation unless you had mentioned it previously.
Okay, I would like to make a formal request from this council to consider addressing those two items in the budget this year.
I think the August 7th meeting, when it's on the agenda, is when we can say want to make certain changes to this, because it is
Okay.
on the agenda at that time, and then we'll be able to suggest things, make a motion.
This is not
and then
something, this isn't an official council meeting to be
Yeah.
able to make.
So we're just in a presentation.
Yeah,
and then
so-
August 7th, that's why we
This is
made
the
it to another.
presentations.
I would say
Can't make a
utilize
decision.
tonight's council meeting at staff communication, or council communications.
So I'm sorry, maybe
No,
I was
that's,
completely off base. So we're getting the presentation, we go back, we digest it, and then if any one of the 5 of us, any member of the community have feedback, we bring all of those markups to the August meeting? Is that correct?
yeah.
That's the impression that I had.
That's the way I understood it.
Okay.
Are they gonna be adopted into the budget?
Depends on if we vote for it and approve it and accept it as a group here.
At that point, we
It
will,
has to be
it'll
a
be,
discussion up here to approve or not approve whatever adjustments may be made.
Well, Mr. Engel over here likes to call it a dog and pony show, and for him it probably is because he's never been through this process before. But the whole reason you're doing this is to get public input on things just like
Correct.
Mr. Stroman brought up. And hopefully staff's taking these notes down and will address it with you privately or at another meeting to include those things. Because obviously she hasn't talked to me about any of the capital improvement projects. You've had no input up to it at this point. That's what this meeting should
Sean
be
said
about.
it was a dog.
Oh, no, that was me, but that's what this is. This is a presentation. We're being presented with this information at the same time that you are. So we have the ability to take a look at it, make revisions, make suggestions.
Some of us have been through this before.
Well, I appreciate your experience, sir.
Express them, and we don't like to be held back from it. I'm not giving us an hour here to have staff have a lot of information. But I don't know if everybody here is digesting it. I don't know if they understand the PERS unfunded mandates that the city has incurred because of the years that it wasn't being paid. We got a very detailed explanation there that I don't even get, you know. But you could have presented that a lot simpler by saying, hey, the city hadn't paid for these for a number of years, and now we're paying it back over time, and this is where we're at. It's very,
But we were already told our
Well, that's not necessarily true. That's what we're here for. We're here to get that input.
That was an actual statement by Councilmember Walker, who said that the public was welcome to chime in, but she was sure that it likely wouldn't change anything. And we have that on recording. Play that back if you would like.
I think
Welcome to.
we're going a little sideways in this a little bit, to be honest with you. I think
Thanks, Andy.
what we're looking at is in this particular meeting, we can't make any decisions, but we can hear what people have to say, make notes, investigate it, figure out where things need to be tweaked or not tweaked, and then move forward. And so I think that's where some of the confusion's coming from. Also, the fact that we're, obviously, most of us, except for maybe Dave, haven't been through this process.
Can I
And, oh, go ahead.
request that we also consider the crosswalks along 120? So I've gotten a lot of feedback from parents who have outgoing fifth graders, now incoming sixth graders to El Portal. They do not feel, they have to work, their kids have to walk to school, and crossing 120 is very scary, even at McHenry, which is, I think, the safest area to do it. But the other day, we went by, we did a test on the crosswalk that's supposed to flash. It did not do anything. In addition to that, cars mostly on that road are not from here, so they don't care about our community, and they're just blowing past, the crosswalks and people trying to cross them. So is there anything we can do to maybe put brighter lights or some noise, bird chirping, things that they do to alert people
So
when the kids cross?
unfortunately, Gabriella, if it's 120, it falls to the jurisdiction of Caltrans. And Caltrans isn't going to do anything. In fact, when they ripped up I know we're going off topic, so when they ripped up the flashing beacons at Elizabeth and 120 in front of the Bonnies, when they ripped them up, Caltrans told Public Works, we're going to rip those out because they don't meet code, but if you want to put them back, they're on your dime, not on our dime. So
Isn't that worth it for the safety of our children and our community?
yes, I think so, but
There's a lot of communication currently going on between Supervisor Justin and Caltrans right now. I've seen a couple of emails. They're going back and forth, still scheduling when they're going to start the repairs on the horrible job they did on 120 with their subcontractor that did the work. And so there's a lot of things going back and forth being addressed. So it's still in the works. They have talked about the sidewalks being restriped. I saw that in an email recently from the Caltrans rep. So they are in the process of working on that. That should see some improvement.
Yes.
Real fast, and hopefully we can continue on.
Yeah.
I think tell me if I'm not speaking, or if I'm speaking for everybody collectively, I hope I am. I think what you're hearing is just a disconnect between constituency and city. Because there's so many things to go on, and I know all you guys are brand new, and I voted for something, and I know somebody that would try to get you up there and do some great stuff. But I think it falls upon you folks, not staff. You direct staff what to do. I think it's up to you folks to come out to the city, come out to your people, talk to people in the grocery store, whatever it may be, and get those kinds of things, these kinds of things that we have right now, ironed out so we can bring them back up in council, and then have a discussion when you guys go out and, play your sandbox or whatever you guys do. But right now, I don't mean no disrespect to anybody who spoke. This is not the time. We need to get through this, which I'm sure you guys want to as well, even though this is not a complete budget we're looking at, we're kind of established that. But this needs to get through so we can kind of move into something else. And again, I don't mean to be rude, I'm not trying to say anything out of turn, but hopefully you guys agree with me. Everybody here that we can come with our wonderful little presentation.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a suggestion, based upon myself going around town and tripping myself, and several seniors tripping on sidewalks that are painted fluorescent orange, like they are down in front of the library. I would suggest that the council entertain, and really, really entertain, putting that on one of the city manager council goals for 23, 24. If it's put on there and you address it, it's there every time you take a look at the budget, maybe we'll get those sidewalks taken care of in those issues.
It wasn't a line item existing prior for sidewalk reconstruction, shall we say, and the Public Works team has been doing a pretty good job of moving forward where they can, as much as they can currently, so we can just maybe ramp that up a little bit.
Dominic, is there an appropriate avenue or venue for these suggestions to be made so that we have visibility to them? Is there a spot for these suggestions to be made during communications at the end of this?
That's exactly where, council communications.
Is there-
So at council communications, each one of the council members get an opportunity to speak, and that's where, any concerns or any things that you want to see on the next agenda or place for discussion.
I appreciate that part. I meant
Sorry.
more in general for the public, for them to express their concerns collectively, that we have visibility to them. Is that something that they can email? Is there a suggestion box? Is there an opportunity at the end of this presentation? How is the public's concerns addressed so that we have visibility to that and can kind of prioritize what does and doesn't need to happen?
Sure. So there's various ways. In the past, anytime a constituent's reached out and sent an email to council, if it's addressed to the council, I will share it with the council. But I would also take that stance as your staff to provide that response and let you know the response that I'm providing to them as well. The public meetings are the main area that those type of concerns should be addressed, because that's when all 5 of you are together and hear it all at the same time. And so that alleviates any issues with discussing things that would be on the agenda or that could possibly be before you as action, limiting any interaction regarding those.
So-
So the meetings are always the best approach.
I don't wanna cut
But if
you
you
off.
got emails, everything would go to you as well. And they could email you directly.
More in particularly for the budget issues and the items that are being brought up now, is there a way for folks in the audience or the folks that attended the first meeting or folks that are watching online that have concerns that they don't see on here, how they can express that to us as a group so that we can review those prior to the August 7th meeting?
I mean, if they submit them to the city, I would provide them to you.
So that's the guidance we could give to the audience, is that for the concerns and questions that you have, the best way is to email the city.
Correct.
That will be collected.
Correct.
That will be collected, gathered, and then presented to us
And I
as
can
a
present them
council.
to you, yes.
Okay.
So if you'd like to do that, we can do that. I'm serving as your liaison, basically, between the public in the form of meetings. And so if they're reaching out to me and have things that are at your level to be considered, then I would bring them to you.
Okay.
We also have our agenda item request process that the council approved last year or 2 years ago, where they can ask for things to be put on the agenda for discussion.
Council, could I get consensus on that?
It's not, we can't do that here.
I think at the
Tonight's
We can't do that. at the
Can I,
meeting.
can I make a suggestion
Thank you.
Yes.
to what Councilman Engel was talking about? It's very simple to set up an email address called budgetworkshop@cityofescalon. And if a member of the community has an item, they can email it to that email address, and then it automatically gets sent to city council. And we can take that under review and under advisement for the August 7th meeting.
With all due respect, wasn't that the point of you guys wanting to have this workshop, was so that we could interact with you? This meeting is being held more like an official council meeting than what you wanted. We wanted an ad hoc. We wanted somebody to be able to come from the public and sit up there and have these discussions with you guys, and that was shot down. So you wanted to have this workshop, that's what you've gotten.
I,
This is not, you can't possibly expect to hand us this and us to say everything looks great. You are missing probably about 99% of the actual meat and potatoes of what goes on here. You've given us a summary, which, of things that may or may not happen, money we may or may not get. I mean, we can't possibly, have all of our, questions lined up for you without having previously seen this. Now, the next meeting, am I wrong, that is the meeting that you guys are gonna adopt this, or is
That
there
is the
another
typical
meeting?
process, yes, that's the way it's gone in the past.
I just
And
wanna
that's
make
subject to
clear,
council
the next-
direction. So that item would be agendized for August 7th because that was the direction. And if the council does not agree on the budget, they can continue it to a future meeting. It does not have to be adopted that
My
evening.
question is just how any interaction happen if you guys don't talk to each other outside of council? We can't interact with you. It's kind of, what was the point of this to begin with?
I think some of that falls under the Brown Act, as far as like us being able to talk. Is that what you
Outside of
mean?
a meeting.
I thought
Outside of a
we weren't
meeting.
having a formal council meeting. We
We're
were
not.
just-
We're not currently having a council meeting.
This isn't a council meeting on paper, so to speak.
Then why does the Brown Act apply?
No, not right now, outside of,
You're asking us to talk outside of a meeting collectively, and that's a Brown Act violation, is what we're saying.
If the members of the public, if we got like a town meeting and didn't include any of you, and we all had a discussion and brought to you our issues, would that be
absolutely fine.
You're
something
more than
that?
welcome to do that.
We hope that.
Yeah, absolutely fine. That's not an issue at all. Hmm? But like Jeremy was trying to give you a solution so that we can get those ideas, so that we
And
can,
that was great. It's just
you know.
Jerry gave this awesome solution. Dominique's willingness to do it has now turned into Sean going to create an email for us. I mean, it's,
So,
it's more.
so,
There's a lot more detail. This is an overview of the CIP. There's more detail on the back of this that has more explanation,
Haven't
more
gotten
detail
there
that we
yet.
haven't gotten to. So there's a lot of questions going on right now. And if we got deeper into the presentation, I think we'd have some of the answers for you folks. At this point, we're at the very first level of going over a review of CIP, and there's a lot more issues later on here that will give you more detail on that.
And just to
We
what,
haven't even got to the revenues yet.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just to what Jeremy was saying, you and I, Dominique, had a conversation earlier, and I was under the impression that public comment would be accepted, and we would be listening to public comment tonight, and that was what the purpose of this workshop was, so that we could have a collaboration and we could have communication with the public tonight. And so that's always been the intention. And so from our conversation earlier, that was what the understanding was, with that there would be some sort of welcome for that dialogue, or for them to put in some input tonight so that we could hear that. So that is the impression that I am under in this meeting tonight, is that we are supposed to be hearing from the public, and either there should be a time on our agenda that says open to public comment, or it needs to be dealt with in some other way. But that was my concern, that that wasn't said on the agenda. And I just want to make sure that that's out in the open, that that was the intention of this meeting when we were set up, was so that tonight we could have that discussion. And that at our next meeting, it's on the agenda, and if we had anything to say about it, we could go forward and say it as a council and reply to that in the next 2 weeks that we have to digest, talk to them, and all of that. So that's the impression that I was under.
The impression I was under that we would actually have the entire budget. The plan-
Well, that,
That was my intention. That's why I'm here. And we don't.
So you have something to talk about. Not just tonight. I guess some of it tonight, it would have been nice to have it a couple of days ago. Also, I think it's interesting that you wanted to hear from the public, and you allowed 1 hour. If you wanted to hear from the public, this should have been open, and we should have had the opportunity to give input. Much easier for that, and then there should have been a process. We should prepare the process. Nations would be taken. I think you made a good effort at it. It's just that getting much time to give you.
So our intent with this workshop presentation is that it continues until it's done. So the council meeting is always scheduled for 7 o'clock. We're not allowed to start earlier than 7, but we can always start later. And so this meeting will continue until we're completed, unless there's any reasoning not to.
If we are going to continue, can we, instead of reading line by line, can we just do a summary of each paragraph so that we go a little quicker?
Sure. Where did we leave off?
Go to the next slide regarding revenues.
Okay.
So in a quick summary, when you're looking at citywide revenues, proposed 23-24 is projected to be at $13.9 million. We receive half of the ARPA of $1.8 million in this fiscal year. And then it also notes kind of like a decrease in the general fund by 16%. It's a result of businesses in town that has closed down as well. So on the next slide, it just gives you an overview of the revenue streams in the different departments, and it'll identify what it's for, or what type it is, and what it can be used for. So when you're looking at gas tax, these are specifically to be used for streets and roads. The lighting and landscapes, those are specified for specific districts. When you're looking at SLESA fund, that's to support operational costs for the police department. When it comes to revenue projections, as in Escalon's practice, the revenues portion in this budget are usually conservatives. For city revenue, money is received from tax, fees, charges, assessments, intergovernment revenue, investment earnings, and items related to license, permit, fines, and penalties. So the two largest sources of revenues are for property tax and sales tax, which makes up about 75% of the general fund revenues. So this projected fiscal year, you're looking at a decrease of about 19%, and an increase in property tax of 5%. So when you're looking at the overall number, you're looking at a decrease of $277,000 projected for the next fiscal year. And this right here is just a summary of the calculation as to how I came up with the number. As you can see, the sales tax projected to be at a decrease due to businesses closing down, so you're looking at a decrease again of that $277,000. In this calculation, I took out the one-time COVID grant that we received in order to come up with this number, because I feel like it was a one-time revenue stream and it should be left out into factoring the calculations.
I have a quick question. The general fund, two of the largest sources of revenue are property and sales tax. The sales tax revenue is a decrease of 19.22, and that
Yes.
includes losing Ford.
It's a combination of, I think, Ford and other businesses around the areas too. I believe it was it True Value or?
Yeah.
So we lost True Value, we lost
Just-
Ford,
And then,
Sales tax generation in general,
yeah.
yeah.
and that's only 19%.
19%, which is about $277,000 when you're comparing it to the prior fiscal year.
I thought we were getting about 300,000 just from Ford.
I mean, that number is a combination of other businesses. Ford does play a large role.
Okay.
So when we get into the expenditure section, I just wanted to go over kind of like the general fund usage and what it can be used for in terms of expenditures. These are to support police services, community development, street maintenance, animal control, weed abatement, park and maintenance, community centers, and recreations. Other services that are funded through general fund expenditures are personnel, finance, city management, city council, and then there's maintenance, and also included with that's library. So the total expenditures for general fund is expected to increase at a little bit over 12% compared to the prior years. This is a result of the items listed below. Some of them, it's related to one-time payment for upgrade server replacements. There's 8 AC or ice machine replacements that's needed at the community center. Our work comps insurance increase as a result of a workers' comps claim increasing with that. There's a $218,000 one-time equipment cost for the police department. So that includes one new vehicle, handheld radio replacements, and computer replacements, and also updates to their RIM services for City of Ripon dispatch services. In addition to that, there's the $120,000 one-time cost for the housing element update.
How do you get to that?
The $120,000?
Yeah, when I was on the planning commission, $25,000. I questioned it, it got down to $57,000. They're up to $120,000.
We put out a request for proposals for those services. And the top 3 that we're currently interviewing right now are all around that number. And so that's for budgeting purposes, that's what we're putting into the budget to cover the costs. Now, it may come in less, but that's what we need to add into the budget to move forward.
Just so you all know up there, and Sean, you know this, the housing elements of boilerplate document, yeah, you might change an and number and this and that. $120,000 represents an employee for 1 year. If you're gonna pay to a consulting company that's gonna just plug it in, I think that's a little more, for our little town, that's a lot of money. I think you need to run that.
So along with those costs is Public Works vehicle replacement that was requested last year, but that hasn't been replaced yet. So this right here, I just broke down the general fund expenditures by department so that you can see an overview as to what departments take up general fund costs. So when you're looking at PD, it's at 56% right there. So the overall general fund summary expenditure is projected to be at $5.8 million. So on the next slide, you have an organizational chart for City of Escalon. The number hasn't changed. We're still budgeted for 31 employees. So it gives you an overview of the departments and the different staff that's working in the different areas for the City of Escalon. So on the next page, I included all of the positions, but then allocate them or give you an overview of kind of like where they're being charged to. So you have staff that spends times in different areas, so it's just giving you an overview of how the salaries and benefits are being charged based on where they spend their time. Do you have any questions about positions or anything like that? No, those are hours. It's broken down. So if you look at the accountant, for instance, you see at the end of it, grand total is at 1, but the time is spent in different areas.
Is that 1 hour?
No, just
Just
one.
one person.
One person.
Like
One person.
equivalent. So we have, if you use accountant as a position, we have.
Quarters of a person? I mean, how does that work?
So
Their
if you
time
look
is
at
allocated
the
that much to
position,
their
say the top one's accountant, you go all the way to the right, the grand total is 1 because we have 1 accountant, but their time is split up 10% in water, 20% in sewer, 70% in management and support.
Yeah, because they work on, when you think about it, there's payroll, accounts payable that can't be charged
I
to.
understand, but this, so you're saying that if, on accountant, you only have 1 accountant?
Yes.
But their time is spent doing these things, so why do you have, you just told me earlier you had 3 people now doing accounting.
We have 1 accountant, 1 accounting technician, and then we have 1 finance director. So 3 people in that area that oversee finances or have a position in finance, with the director being the head of that department, an accountant, and then an accounting tech. And so if you look at accountant, there's 70% in management and support,
I get
sewer.
it.
Yeah, and so then the other ones are broken up there, and then the finance director is spread between management and support and legislative.
We have 9, under police officer, we have 9 current active officers.
Yes, we have 9 police officers, 2 sergeants, and 1 police chief, 1 police services manager, 1 community services officer, and a part-time office assistant. All right, so moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to include kind of like a chart where it gives you kind of like an overall summary of the categorized expenditures. Before I go on to the next slide, you know, when it comes to personnel services, this includes salaries, wages, and benefits. When you're looking at supplies and other services, these are contractual costs, utility costs, info technology costs, attorney costs, that's categorized into this area. The general government and cost center costs, these are related to city administration or legislative costs that are allocated towards the end of the year, depending on operational costs for the various departments. Contribution to other agencies, this is related to, you can just disregard the note that I had on the side right there. That's incorrect. I was just copying information from above, and it looks like I pasted there in error. But when it comes to contribution to other cities, these are related to water, sewer, storm, wastewater regulations fee that are paid every single year. And then there's the loan charges too, as well.
Categories are broken down further in your spreadsheet.
Yeah, if you're looking at about 14,000 lines, 1,400 lines for different, yeah, so I try to like summarize it as much as possible into a category.
And is that the same with the, sorry, I was looking at the one previous. Is it the same with this one, or is this the total breakdown?
Which slide are you looking at?
I was looking at the expense categories, but now looking at the general fund expenses by department.
Yeah, so this is,
the furthest breakdown on it, or did they have more subcategories?
it can go into more categories, such as kind of like if you're wanting to look at fuel charges, professional contract services, it'd be very detailed, so I categorize it into kind of like, when it comes to kind of like supplies and other services, in these areas, you're looking at like repair, maintenance costs, contractual costs and things like that, that are just lumped up into that category.
But it reflects the total from all those subcategories as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so I just wanted to put it in a simpler format to where it's just more summarized versus kind of like putting out all the details. So we're in the next slide, I just wanted to go over kind of like the general fund expenditure summaries by department. You're on the right one. So in terms of animal control, projected to be at 196,000, building 218,000. Then you have code enforcement at 6,000. So again, when it comes to general fund for the community center, we're proposing 447,000, and it was a little bit higher compared to the prior year. This is due to a request from Public Works to replace AC unit, and there's ice machine that needs to be replaced too at the community center. Corp Yard. So when it comes to Corp Yard, you have $40,000 right there. It looks like they need to update their P2P server replacement that was identified by our IT consultant too as well. Engineering, you're looking at an overall of a projected 242,000.
So for the general public, so Pete, rather than go through each specific line item, on page 19 for the general fund expenditure summary, is there a way that these items can be identified as must-haves, that we have to do these versus just a wish list by the department head? Or are all of these items considered, we have to do these, we don't have a choice?
Yeah, so when I sent out the documents to all of the department head, these are the items that they've identified that are needed. I know that the ice machine's been out, and so it's needing to be replaced, so that's something that was requested by Public Works. But it's at the discretion of council too. That's identified, but then it's a discussion that we all can have and decide what needs to be moved forward or what doesn't.
We could definitely go back to staff and inquire further, and then provide that information at the next meeting.
So when it comes to general fund in the engineering department, you're looking at total cost projected to be at 242,000. And you also have parks. There's $186,000 that's budgeted to there as well. 27. So there's planning in the general fund, cost for $365,000. It's related to the cost, the housing element that's factored into it as well. So when you're looking at the increase, it's relating to that too as well. So in the police department, you're looking at an overall $3.3 million compared to the prior year, and this is a result of equipments being replaced, you know, in terms of police vehicle, handheld radios, and handguns. And I'm trying to think, am I missing anything? Server, the RIM service.
The servers.
Does any of that include a pay raise for them?
I didn't factor any increases into it, just only the general service unit, because I wanted to reflect kind of like what an estimated fund balance would look like in the general fund to make any determination as to, you know, what does it look like? What's the big picture? How much do we have? Are we able to support it? Because I feel like the budget should be accurately reflected based on current positions, their current wages right now, and what their benefits include, you know, when it comes to healthcare, which plans they're on, and things like that. So to continue on with the general fund, you have recreation. There's $270,000 that's budgeted there. There's a little bit of a decrease because last year we had more people help in this area because we had a staff that had retired.
I just want to correct that statement. We had a person who did retire, and so they basically cashed out their fees. We didn't lose any people in that department. That position was filled, just the title has been updated.
Yeah, so that's a result of when you have people leaving that has so much time on the books, they get to cash that out too as well. So street lighting, you're looking at $115,000, and then the last one is for streets, $392,000, and that's because two public works vehicle replacements, two that was requested last year need to be replaced this year compared to the prior year. I think there's been, you know, due to inflation, the cost of equipment, supplies, and things like that has been increasing. So I know Justin had reached out to the vendor to get an idea of how much it was going to cost, and this is what it was projected or estimated to be at for those two vehicles. So what does the fund summary look like just when you're talking about general reserve balance? So at the beginning of July 1st, 2023, there was a reserve balance of about $4.5 million. The operating revenues is projected to be at $4.6 million. Operating expenditures is projected to be at $5.3 million. So overall, you're looking at a net deficit of about $690,000. So our ending balance projected for fiscal year 23-24 is expected to be at $3.3 million. So setting aside some money for the operating reserve, you're looking at $2.2 million, which is above that 33%. So you're looking at 41% of the general fund reserve. And then I'd also recommend putting aside money for equipment reserve because it seems like there's a lot of requests for things that need to be updated throughout the year. So I just want to make sure that we have funds for that. In addition to that, I would recommend setting aside the debt service reserves too to support the Civic Center, City Hall, and the equipment lease that the city currently has. So in the next section here, you're going into the development impact fees, also known as AB 1600. So for the parks area, so in the parks deferred impact fee, you're looking at proposed budget of $89,000. For the transportation mitigation fees, it's just a carryover balance. It looks like it was an amount that was requested by Public Works, and I don't believe any expenditures occurred in the prior fiscal year, so it's just carrying it forward. So overall, the development impacts fee, you're looking at a proposed $109,000 in expenditures there. So in the next area, it's related to lighting and landscape maintenance districts. So these are the special funds that we receive that's specifically allocated to just the district areas. So when you're looking at Sunrise, there's not that much change there. It's projected to be at $11,000. Bellaterra, it's at $63,000. Westwood, $41,000. the estate's 16,000, and the BAD is at 2,500. So when you're comparing it to this, the projected fiscal year is at 135,000, so there's not that much of an increase. And these are to support kind of like utility costs, electricity, or land maintenance for parks, park landscaping and things like that.
And all of these items, as indicated, we had them on the consent calendar at the last meeting, and they're actually on the agenda tonight for their public hearings, for their annual engineers' reports.
So in the next slide, it's related to the Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund. We typically get about $150,000 a year in this area, and the fund is basically being used to support operational costs related to salaries and benefits for police officers. And then there's also that $68,000 request for 2 police vehicles that was replaced last year, but then the vinyl wrapping for it wasn't completed in the last fiscal year, so it's just being carried forward for completion for this year. So for Measure K expenditures, overall, you're looking at a proposed amount of $5.2 million. And this is a result of the projects listed above that table right there. You're looking at Project 188, South McHenry Avenue. Engineers' costs are indicating that it's going to be at $2.3 million. There's the Vintage Estate Streets Reconstruct, which is estimated to be at $416,000. There's the Main Street Bike and Pedestrian Improvement projected to be at $1.2 million, and there's the First Street Improvement for $1.3 million. And of that amount, $500,000 is being funded by Measure K. Not Measure K, but through
Measure K.
SJGOG.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Have RFPs gone out for these?
Not for the construction, no. So for Main Street, the design's been completed, and then in this project year, that's when the RFPs will be put out, or a construct for bid.
So we got these numbers now?
We have our city engineer who provides engineer estimates on the projects, yeah.
Did you have a question?
I was just pointing to the gentleman in the back.
Oh, okay. All right, so moving on to the next slide, it's related to SB gas tax or SB1 expenditures. This is specifically used for streets and road. So for the proposed 23-24 fiscal years, you're looking at $702,000, and it's related to the various projects identified above. They're mostly related to slurry crack seal, of a little bit over about $650,000 there. And then you have that new project, the Yosemite sidewalk replacement for $37,000 right there too. So in the next slide, this is for debt service related to community civic and community center. So it looks like on an annual basis, we pay about $160,000 that's funded by the general fund in this area. And that's why you see it at a zero balance, because it gets transferred out. So really that balance at the end of the year, there's really no money in there as it's funded by the general fund. Energy debt lease, you're looking at an annual payment of $145,000 a year that's funded by the general fund as well. All right, so on this slide, I think we've already went over it before as to what enterprise fund is made up of, which is water, sewer, storm, and public transit. So I'm just going to go into the expenditures details related to the enterprise fund. So on the next slide, I just wanted to give you an overview as to what the water fund balance looked like and what it involves. So in the past, the city has recently received a revolving fund loan for the construction of well 1A, and a rate study was completed, in fiscal year 1920. So we've gotten a loan through SRF for about $1.3 million to support well 1A. So in addition to that, I wanted to highlight kind of like in the fund balance, there's money reserved set aside related to the sale of water from City of Tracy. So you're looking at a balance of a little bit over $1 million right there too for the sale of water that's currently sitting there. So overall, the projected fund balance just for water by itself, you're looking at $4.7 million. I indicated some notes at the bottom of the chart where I know that there's been increased costs in capital expenditures, and I want to make sure that the city recognize that we should set money aside to pay for the debt service that we continue to pay for, just to make sure that there's funds there. So the next slide is just going over a little bit more of a detail over the water expenditures. There's the operating and capital costs, the depreciation costs, and there's the debt service loan costs. So the proposed expenditures just for water itself, you're looking at a total of $4.7 million, and it's a result of the projects that's listed on the right side of the slide. So you're looking at a generator upgrade for $162,000, the water valve replacement for $132,000, the well 1A construction cost, $2.5 million. I know originally it was estimated at 1.5, but I think when they went and took it out for bid, it came at $2.5 billion. There's well abandoned number 6 for $30,000. The Vintage Estates water main replacement for $537,000, and there's a new project that was identified by our engineers and public works, St. Clair Street water line replacement for $71,000. So moving on to the next enterprise fund, you're looking at the sewer. So based on a current sewer rate study from 2016, the last sewer rate increase was back in 2019. So a new rate study of the city's sewer system will be required as the city moves forward with wastewater treatment plant modernization projects. Both water waste treatment plant designs and future rate studies costs are appropriated to ARPA funds. So part of that project is being funded by ARPA funds. I know they moved about $1.4 million over for it.
Design.
For design.
Design of the
portion.
plan, yeah.
So in addition to that, there's phase 1 that for the sewer trunk line rehabilitation that was already completed. So for the next fiscal year, city staff who is planning on starting the phase 2. And then in addition to that, there's phase 3 that's scheduled out to the following fiscal year after that. And it looks like the engineering and design work for improvements at the water waste treatment plant has been underway for several months, and it's at 90% complete in regards to design.
Almost.
90%, yeah. So this section right here goes over an overview of what the industrial fund balance is projected to be at the end of fiscal year 23-24. You're looking at a projected balance of $822,000. Again, this is for debt service, sewer bonds that the city has to pay for, and it looks like on an annual basis, we pay about $358,000 for it. And there's a couple projects that I listed there too, which is that wastewater treatment plant. And in addition to that, there's the industrial pond sludge removal for $350,000. And on top of that, Public Works is requesting $65,000 for aerators replacements as well.
Is there a line item that shows what it costs the city to run and operate the wastewater treatment plant year after
Wastewater treatment plant. Yeah, if you go into the next slide, slide 42, it goes, it's right here. I know that if you want an overview of the past 3 years, I can provide.
Well, now, what does it cost to run our treatment plant? Personnel, electricity,
So in slide 42 here, it shows you when it comes to industrial operating, when it comes to personnel costs, you're looking at $172,000 that's projected for this fiscal year. And in the middle column right there, you'll see kind of like it was $160,000 in the prior year before that. So when it comes to personnel costs, it's $172,000 that's identified right there. So overall, the sewer expenditures, you're looking at $2.1 million, and it's the result of the 2 projects that was identified earlier, which is the wastewater treatment plant and the sludge removal. In addition to that, the aerator replacement. So in this section right here, it goes over sewer municipal fund balance. Overall, the estimated fund balance for 23-24 is projected to be at $2.1 million. There's multiple projects that's listed under this fund. One of them is the wastewater treatment plant. It's split between the industrial and municipal. There's project 214 for McHenry Trunk Line Rehab Phase 2. That's, the plan is to start it in the next fiscal year, and that's projected to be at $2.5 million. And then there's the SCADA upgrade for $10,000, McHenry controllers for $10,000, and there's the lift station at Kerrigan for $775,000. In addition to that, Public Works is requesting an aquajet replacement too for sewer. So right here, it just goes over in more further details as to what the sewer expenditures look like. So overall, you're looking at a little bit over $5 million that's proposed for fiscal year 23-24. A lot of it's related to the Phase 2 McKinney trunk line for that $2.5 million right there. So on the next slide, this is in regards to the storm fund balance. So storm operating costs are currently exceeding the revenues, and the process to raise these rates would require votes of the residents and are handled differently than water and sewer rates. We continue to incur increased costs due to MS4 permitting requirements by the state of California. So when you're looking at the estimated fund balance, it's at $352,000 right there. So the next slide just breaks it down into further details as to what the costs are associated with it. You know, there's personnel costs of $94,000. And then there's other services, routine costs for $73,000. Overall, storm expenditures is for $307,000 here. So in the next slide, that's the last of the enterprise fund, which is related to transit. So transit is funded by pass-through revenue, and the overall projected fund balance is expected to be at a little bit over $3,000 there. So in the next slide, it goes over capital costs for transit in further details. You know, we have salaries and benefits for our contract services with our transit services manager, supplies costs, and it's for MTM contractual services provided by MTM for transit services. Capital outlay, you're looking at $69 that's being requested. That's for the meal cars. For that, is it rent a car or you rent the car and, yeah.
Borrow.
Borrow a car, yeah. So on this slide right here, it gives you an overview of all of the funds, and based on the revenues projected for fiscal year 23-24, operating expenditures projected for 23-24, along with that, the capital costs, you're looking at these different ending balances for the various funds that the city has. So the overall total ending funding balance is projected to be at $14.2 million, which isn't much of a change compared to the prior year. If you look at the budget book, they're about the same.
And so there's a highlighted number on there regarding Fund 290, which is that Measure K fund. That is where the Main Street Bike and Pedestrian Project, as well as the First Street Project, are sitting in. So one of them is currently funded for $500,000. The other one is funded for 1.9. So there is currently an amount for the First Street, which is that $800,000 that was spoke about earlier, that will be looking for funding sources, and that will be provided to you as a recommendation at the next meeting, or option for council at the meeting with adoption. So if you have any other questions. Sure.
I have a question. There's one that's nagging at me, and that is, animal shelter.
Yes.
I talked to Collector, those guys that I talked to the other day down, and looking at that, it's gone up. Before
So the main component when it came to animal control services in the shelter was staffing. We weren't able to keep the shelter staffed. We were having a hard time keeping staff at the location, and we got to the point where we weren't opening to the public at all for any of our hours. Or we were able to open for one day a week for a 4-hour period. And so that main drive was us not being able to get it staffed. In addition, if we were able to staff it fully, the way it is being staffed now, like they're providing that full service, even though it's in the city of Oakdale where they have people available to provide calls, the service is much more than we were able to provide in those windows where we were open half a day, 4 days a week. For the amount of money it would cost us to provide that same service would be much more than this. So it is a cost savings to the city in the aspect that they're able to provide more efficiency and more availability to the city for on-call basis, as well as, handling calls that come in. Whereas for us, it was, in most cases, our police department having to respond out to animal control because so many things were outside of the windows when the shelters actually open. So it is a cost savings to us in the aspect that if we were operating the way the city of Oakdale operates for the city, it would cost us more.
Chief, what are the hours typically for animal control?
They're here 8 o'clock in the morning and usually leave around 4.
Monday through Friday?
Monday through Thursday, I believe. But I can check on that. I'm not completely sure. But
We're not using our facility anymore, correct?
no,
Correct.
So we have no expense other than what we're paying to Oakdale to take on the responsibility costs, correct?
no, there's other costs.
There's a little bit of utility cost too for the building. We have fire alarm at that building.
Being used, why are we spending money on it? You just said Oakdale's taking care of it, so why are we using the building and paying utility costs on it? It makes sense.
There's a certain amount of asset protection. We have to maintain a certain level of
No, I know, I'm
protection
just
to
saying,
it.
that doesn't make any sense to me.
Donnie, can I, maybe get some clarification?
Sure.
I think I see what you're saying, is that if it costs us $300,000 and it's costing us this much money per year to understaff, we're not producing, it's not doing well, the projection was, is it gonna cost us more money to give it to Oakdale, which it will, but it's gonna be under what it would have cost us to staff it like Oakdale is. So in the abstract, we're saving money, what you're saying,
Correct.
but we're actually spending more. So I think there's just a miscommunication.
Yeah, it's that level of efficiency. We weren't able to keep it staffed, and so we were getting a lot of complaints where people would show up at the shelter with animals, and if we didn't have somebody to house it was closed, and we didn't have anybody there. And so then we'd get the call, your door says you're open 8 to 12, nobody's here, what's going on? And it got to the point where we couldn't keep animal control officers anymore at all staffed. They would,
What is our when did Oakdale take over animal services?
Oakdale took it over maybe about a year ago.
So last
Has it been a
year,
year?
we paid them
I don't think it was
around $99,000. Why are we paying them another
It wasn't a full year
it
ago.
wasn't a full
Was it
year.
a
Last year,
It was not a full year?
No, it wasn't
Not
a full
yet.
year ago that we
Okay.
did this.
Okay, so $157,000, that's our contracted amount with them?
about 152,000. When I'm looking at the average cost for it on a monthly basis, you're looking at around $12,700 per month. So the difference in that is related to electricity for the fire alarm, but along with that, there's pest control or maintenance services that
On
needs.
their building in Oakdale, correct?
No, this is right here for our building here.
We still maintain the building.
Pest control?
It's minimal, but she's saying it's $12,000, about $12 grand a month, which seems a little exorbitant. I'm sure we can probably, I'm gonna say it again, we have to whip out, if we had a full budget, we'd probably see. But I kind of see where, it sounds like 12 grand's a lot of money per month to put a fire alarm.
I'm asking, is that 12 grand for our building?
Yeah.
Okay, what I'm asking is, what are we paying for Oakdale's building, for Oakdale only?
Are you referring to the $12,000 amount that I just referred to right
I
now?
don't know.
That $12,700 is related to contractual services costs for City of Oakdale. So animal services contract that's being provided by City of Oakdale, you're looking at it averaging about $12,700 monthly. So that's about $152,000 a year.
So then you're saying that we're only doing about $5,000 worth on our building here, that's vacant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was other agencies explored, like I know county does stuff, and that's a huge pain in the ass for people in this town to go to county, but were other avenues explored besides having Oakdale say, I'll do it?
We did reach out to Stanislaus County. They were a little bit more, and we also felt like the drive to Stockton would be a huge hiccup for most people. Like, most people that we see with animals don't want to go all the way to Stockton for a shelter, whereas Oakdale seemed more amicable for everyone.
So-
And it's right there off of River Road, and so it's not too much of an inconvenience if needed.
Difference between this and this, between and is because of.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the annual cost related to, there's electricity, there's the pest control. It's for the fire alarms to continue to work.
It's $5,000 annually.
Building we're not using.
It's
an annual, not
It's
a
not
year
$5,000.
end.
Annually.
Yeah,
Again, the $5,000, is that annually or is that monthly?
Annually.
That's fine,
Thank you. I thought it was monthly, I'm going, what the hell are you guys doing?
Okay,
Yeah.
two things. One, the building personnel services from last year, we're going up 60+ thousand. Do we hire somebody new? Is that what we?
yes, we do.
Gentleman right here.
We have Jalen French right here, is our new Development Community and
Okay.
Services
All
Manager.
right, and then, have a communication, or is that community center or communication center?
It's community
Community
center.
center.
It's abbreviated.
They $70,000 more on supplies, is that because of their ice machine and all of that, or is this because the cost of pencils have gone up? Or
That's for the ice machine, which is indicated to me for $15,000, but
Yeah,
then,
we gotta find
And the
somebody.
air conditioners.
I'll buy, you know something, I will supply for 15 grand, because I can go buy a brand new one for about 4.
and,
I use ice machines
yeah,
all the
It's a
time.
budget.
You want one, I'll give you one for 4.
So-
You pay me 5 grand, and I'll sell it to you. I'll still make one.
along with that, there's that $65,000 that Public Works has indicated for AC replacement too, as well for the community center.
So $100,000 for
No, $15,000 for the ice machine and $65 for
$65,000 in that AC?
the AC replacement unit.
How big is that?
Is that an engineer's estimate again?
No, I believe Justin reached
Going off
out to
bids.
different vendors.
What RFP went out for that?
Because of the threshold, an RFP is not required, so we have a process for informal bids where we reach out to 3 different companies,
I mean, now they're the cheapest one.
probably,
Can
yeah.
I waiver custom?
There's more than one AC unit out there, too.
I believe there's 8 of them in that
All
building.
at the same time.
Yeah,
Kinda weird.
I think there's 8 of them in the building.
And they're dead or they're struggling? I mean, does it need Freon?
Well, no, they
Two-
don't need it. I'm sure with some kind of proposal from,
Well, I saw a proposal
Yeah.
for 2 units on my very large house for $10,000.
yeah, you bet it's fat.
Use definitely commercial grade.
Yeah.
Gracie has a comment.
It's a great comment.
Gracie has a comment.
Yeah.
Gracie.
They're out, they're not just struggling.
They're out, okay.
Yeah.
They're not working to the efficiency they should, that's for sure. You have a large crowd, it's warm.
How's that building?
I believe it was built in 2000, remodeled in 2000.
One of the AC units probably done that.
I can't recall if that was done at that time. Yeah, there's quite a few of them in there. They're commercial grade. They're very large, the ones that are currently in there. And as our hostess indicated, they're out, yeah.
One other question, in the budget, where could I find the money you guys set aside for economic development?
We don't have an area for economic development in the budget.
That's insane, because you know why? We don't go out and try to find revenue, we're gonna get in bigger and bigger trouble time goes on. Because we're running out of revenue, we're gonna raise fees to cover our butts, because we're not smart enough to create revenue for this community. We have to find a way, we have funding mechanisms funding that comes in to supplement the life we have here.
Without raising taxes.
Well, you're gonna have to do a little bit, not as much though, hopefully. The point I'm getting at is, I cannot believe there is no money or no plan for economic development in this community. That is sad.
Did we also hire someone in the corporate yard and engineering? Engineering, we've gone up another
Can we get an answer to this question
$70,000.
first? I want an answer. What are we gonna do about economic development in Escalon?
I mean, it's never been in any past budgets prior, so if that's something that council wants to allocate money to and create something for,
Have you thought about it?
I mean, just let staff know.
Revenue is gonna get shorter every year. We've already lost Ford and a couple other businesses in town, and maybe we should get off our butts.
I-
Try to figure a way to generate revenue. I mean, we have
Mr. Al-
enterprise zones. We could lower our cost in developing. There's other things we can consider, but we're not doing any of that.
Mr. Alves,
The biggest concern for this town.
I have an answer for you. So basically, we've already proposed the idea of putting together a strategic plan for the town. It's something that has been proposed in the background and getting a game plan for that together. So that would obviously include what you're talking about.
Where's the revenue gonna come from? To help put that into place. So you have nothing in your.
Well, that's
current budget.
part of the strategic plan. You got to figure that out, right?
You still have to have it in your budget, so when you get ready to do it, you have the money. So
Correct.
the question is, where in that budget have you set aside that money that's got this plan going that we don't know about?
Can you tell us about the plan?
I don't think it's been set aside yet. I mean, that's something that has to happen once we have, this all come together.
Consolidate the plan, I understand that, and I appreciate the
Yeah.
fact that you consider it. My problem is, you have no money for it, and it takes money
Yeah.
to make that happen. So my question is, what part of the budget could we have for some kind of economic development in this community? That's what I'm asking.
That's a good question. I think
My
that's,
question is, don't you think as a council, you're obligated for the benefit of this community to find other funding sources other than taxes? And if you don't, you should be up there, you should be out.
I would agree.
So,
Ed, I
my
think,
point is,
It's the same struggle for revenue we've had for years around here, I
I
think.
understand we have that, David, my point is, we need more. We've lost major businesses, we've
You're
lost
correct.
stores, we need to come up with some sort of a formulated plan where we can put it out to the paper and say, listen, people, developers, we're interested in commercial development in Escalon, and we're willing to negotiate with you, you'll come and negotiate with us. We've never done nothing like that. We've never done, it's just insane that we step back and we wait for revenue to come to us. It's not the way the game's played. The way the game's played is you go out and you solicit, and you find something that fits your niche in this community, and then we hopefully were able to stimulate it and get some revenue other than the current situation, which is annual tax increases. I'm just saying, you need to put some serious thought to this in the council.
It'd be a horrible thing to think about this. You imagine what would happen. Hogan retired and shit. Well, you boys might have just walked off this stage.
How much money do you think they provide us in taxes?
You know, that will
Almost
help
none.
employees and employers and
No,
all
no,
that.
how much do you think they provide us in taxes?
I'm hoping.
I mean, that's just gotta be,
Gotta be more than 20%.
They pay $380,000 plus in property taxes a year.
and they'll always be paying property taxes.
Yeah, they'll always do that.
County.
Whoever owns it.
I'm just saying that they do contribute not as much.
Retail.
No, you're right, they don't.
I'd like to add to what using last year's goals and new budget. First of all, we should have the goals for the community, we should have listened to. There's nothing in there about the police, and I know that's a major concern. Sidewalks as a committee. This is something that Ed brought up that is so worth thinking about. The goals need to be set first, then you set the budget, and you show in the budget, I'm just gonna use the police because that's what I show that they, listening to this people here in this city for this next budget year, they want the police to be. Make that a goal, show it in the budget, what paying them now, what we think we can afford to pay them, and then it's our job to go through the budget, make adjustments, close some of those line items that don't belong there, and transfer money in. Like Ed said, then what can we do to bring more revenue? I just think there needs to be a clearer process for doing this. One that hears what our people are saying in the community about it.
Instead of struggling every year to try to make a budget work, wouldn't it be kind of neat to have more money? And then you go, hey, yeah, we can do that, yeah. Instead, we're every year scrambling to try to recover our butts because we don't have enough money. So the focus, in my opinion, should be on finding more revenue instead of going around trying to strip this money, take that money, do this. It's insanity. We are not doing the process the right way. We need to go out and generate more revenue for this community.
Phyllis, you had a question?
I have a question. This is kind of offbeat, but this has been pondering on my mind. I know in the past there's been fundraisers for the police department, and I know that those funds have been put into the general fund, and I'd like to know if there's been accountability as to where those funds have gone to actually help the police department, because I know all this money that's been raised or whatever, it always goes into the general fund. Where's the accountability to where this money's actually coming out and going to? Is there actually, when they do these, like the past amounts, is there an actual audit to show what transactions are coming in and going out? Because they tell us this is what was spent, but we don't actually see if there's invoices, and is there a dual, is there somebody being held accountable, one person, two people? How do we know what's what? I mean, we trust our city council, of course, but how do we know? I mean, that's a question that's been on my mind. I know a person raised a lot of money for that, and we would like to do something like that for the police
Isn't it all
department, but
501c3?
how do we
Park
allocate
fee,
that?
we're raising money for the skate park, is that?
I mean, this on the police, the police is what I'm concerned about.
Would you like to answer that question, Chief?
Yes. Okay. To answer your question, the fundraisers that we do, or we did in the past, that money gets put into a separate account that is controlled by staff on our side.
Oh, okay.
Has nothing to do with the city. Okay, it doesn't go in the general fund. It goes to a direct account that the police reserves and explorers have, and it goes to those accounts.
So I was misinformed.
Yeah, they have nothing to do with that money. So,
I thought there was a barbecue fundraiser that they did, they did in the past, and it used to go to the police department, and then it got put in.
it's never had gone, no, never gone to the general fund. It's always gone to the organization on the police side.
Okay, so if we wanted to do fundraisers, it could actually go to you guys then, if we did one on our own.
We're working on that.
Okay.
We're working on that, and I'll get back to you. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's my question about the audit, or how do we know, is there two people, or is there invoices, or how do we know where the money's actually gone for last year? I mean, you say $20,000 is gone for this, is there an audit or something that we can see where the money's
There's a mayor audit right here, I can show you. And then the audit.
It was online or something, wasn't it?
There's an audit from 2022 that we're still waiting on the end of this year, right? So I can anticipate this last fiscal year's audit will probably come like next year in the fall, I presume.
I thought I saw something.
Yeah, when it comes to details of payments and things like that made to vendors, that's on the AP demand reports that's provided at every city council meeting. You'll be able to see kind of like the amount that's associated to each vendors and how much it's for, and a description to that's what it's for and things like that. When it comes to internal controls in regards to invoice payment, there's a dual process where you have one person reviewing the invoices and keying it in, and then you have another staff that review it to make sure that it's appropriately being accounted for in the correct line, the amount that's being paid for is correctly or correct, and it goes
So there's two people paying these invoices?
there's two people. There's internal controls where one person would key it in, and there's another person to review it to ensure that everything looks good.
Are there two people signing checks?
Checks?
No, there's
it's
one
just
person.
I have a question.
But all of the checks come before the council in the demand, prior to being released.
Don't mean to.
Oh,
No, that's
We would have a right to know
perfect
this.
question. Sure, of course,
I
of
have a
course.
question, you can answer it briefly, but I think the budget for 2022, 2023 in the reserve is about 35%.
22, 23?
Yes.
For general fund reserve?
Set aside. If you look at the old last year's budget, set aside,
It's 30-something percent, I saw. I don't recall the number myself.
I say 36 would maybe be the high side. It's like 33, 34.
Yeah, so it looks like in last year, fiscal year 22, 23, the general fund amount was at about $2.1 million, which is 44% of, so it's a little bit over that 33% reserve balance for operating expenses. So this year, you're looking at about 41%, so it's a little bit compared to the prior year.
That's pretty good considering you've got new hires, lost 19% in sales tax.
Yeah, and I think a result of that, it's related to the ARPA fund that was received in July 2022. I know that when we received the ARPA fund, a large portion, I believe 1.4 million from the general fund, was moved to support the wastewater treatment plant, but we didn't get that revenue for the ARPA funds not until July. So that's why the reserve balance kind of like remained the same compared to the prior year. It's because we received that money a little bit after the fact.
Question on the layout here. Under the, I just pulled this out, landscape maintenance. Have fiscal year budget 22 to 23 DGP. That's just historical budget.
Yes.
And then the next column, 22, 23, estimated balance.
Yeah, that's for 22, 23 estimated balance for the,
Balance for that line item.
yeah,
And then your proposed 23, 24.
for this,
Has a number based on what?
it's for the projected for the next upcoming fiscal year.
I'll give you a for instance here on Sunrise Terrace. Their main part was, budget was 3175. The estimated balance was 2880, and then the proposed is 3000. What's the justification for that?
I'm sorry, for which one was it and what line are you referring to?
Page 31, the very top.
Looking at this one. Here's the budget. Here's the estimated balance. Here's the proposed.
So you're looking at the estimated balance for 22, 20.
And it's not specific to that line item, it's just in general, how do you account for the differences when there's a balance left in the budget and already passed the budget year, and then you're gonna have an increase?
So when you're referring to that one line right there, you're looking at that $120 difference, right? Or for Sunrise? Yeah, so this is for park maintenance. It's just an estimate. I know in the prior years, it was budgeted at a higher amount. I know by the end of 22, 23, it's a little bit under than what was budgeted. So for the next year, I wanted to propose something that was very close to it, where it wasn't drastically high, but similar to it, that balance. Yeah, these are just estimates. It doesn't mean that we're gonna hit that 3,000. It just depends on the contractual cost for park and maintenance.
So Pete, I think what he was asking was, he was inquiring if that second column, the estimated balance, was the remainder from the budget, but I believe that represents the actual cost.
Yeah,
right?
the expenditures, that's what
Does
it
that, does that
is.
help? Okay.
Yeah.
We estimated 3175, and right now it looks like we're gonna spend 2880.
So the new
Is the
budget.
estimated, that's why they lowered the proposal down to 3.
Yeah, so when you're looking at the
Difference, you get a
first
little closer.
column, I'm sorry,
You're
the
good.
first column is what was budgeted. The second column is based on current the expenditure activities for the past fiscal year, or 22, 23. And so everything that you see in the middle column, those are more of kind of like what it looks like right now in terms of expenditures cost.
That make more sense?
The question was, how do you get on that particular one, and it's, you had the budget, you had the balance, which was
Inflation?
Is there an escalator in there based on, park services?
Yeah, so these are related to kind of like if Public Works do routine maintenance work in that area. So if they're required, or if they're needing to buy pipes or sprinkler fixtures and things like that, it will be charged right there too. So it just varies depending on,
Park maintenance, I don't think it's the city.
park maintenance. Yeah, that's just an estimate. It doesn't, that's just a proposed estimate for fiscal year 23, 24.
You're looking at an escalator.
Budgeting conservatively, this year we're at 28.8 and they added $120 for next year, so we're hoping,
Curious how they get.
if we budget for actual from the prior year, we're gonna be upside down on our budgets all the way through.
Yeah, and then
You have to
working with
budget
the
some
budget.
increase.
I also do look at kind of like the prior, when I ran the reports for it, I looked at the historical cost for the past 3 years to see what it looks like every single year to come up with kind of like what the average would look
Well,
like.
Just for your education, LLDs are tax revenue generation machines for the city that, I don't think any of you are in one. You don't
I am.
pay for it.
I'm in one.
You're in one, okay. So
I see it on my tax bill.
So when you see the budget over here, that was the proposed budget, and the fees that are divided up by the EDUs in that development are charged that. Balance is what actually got paid, there's no refund there. And then your next proposed budget is gonna be higher in that particular line item. So as a proponent for the people that are in LLDs, I've always been curious as to how we keep getting increases when our actual costs are less than the proposed budget. When you go to Pelaterra, same page, and you look at streetlights, streetlights there's been no fee increase since 2012 from MID on streetlights, except for 2 years ago, when they went from just a general monthly charge to a daily charge for the year. So they picked up 4 or 5 days a year, and they put that in the cost. That's peanuts, really. There shouldn't be any change on that at all. It's just going to stay the same. So I don't know why you have 1927 budgeted, the balance is 1603, and you're going to budget 1927 again.
Yeah, so if you look at, I understand that you indicated earlier that it's just for park and maintenance, but when you're looking at Sunrise, you have expenditure costs related to, there's light, electricity, and there's property tax charge, there's utility service, but along with that, when there's repairs that needs to be done, Public Works will need to go out and get miscellaneous, kind of like valve or repair stuff that needs to be bought from Home Depot for it, or things like that. So that has to get charged right there too.
Contract service guy does the sprinkler repairs. There's,
I'm under the impression our city does those repairs.
Yeah, I've seen when.
Contracts for mowing
yeah.
the lawn and trimming bushes and stuff, but I'm under the impression that sprinkler repair is on the city.
Mhm.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I've seen costs associated when it comes to repairs related to those districts that there's,
Sprinkler repairs in Bellaterra are done by Grover. I've seen it. Never seen a city person change out sprinklers. They oversee Grover, and there's an administrative charge or,
I can say I've seen the city staff doing sprinklers in my neighborhood, in the city park area. It was our staff doing it.
I'm talking LLD.
Yeah. The Estates has got
That's not-
landscape and lighting district.
That's paid for by the people that live there.
Mhm.
It's not paid for by, paid for all the contract work. The only thing that varies there is the, charge the maintenance, contract maintenance people may get a raise every year. Our electricity doesn't go up because it's MID. Water rates fluctuate, based on, overall, pretty flat.
Changing all the LEDs on lights to LEDs, did we see it significant?
That'd be a question for Supervisor Collins, who's not on here currently.
We changed all the lights out in the cities from high-pressure sodiums to LEDs. So did we see a significant change in cost of lighting them since we made that?
Well, Jared did. We went from $4,000 a year for 44 lights to,
We experienced that throughout the city, and if we did, that's a great savings in revenue. There you go. But did it offset it in 1 year, in 2 years, where our cost goes down and change down? I don't see that anywhere either. Solar panels, how's that working out for you guys? I know we spent, what are doing on that?
I know we get the reports on a monthly basis. I'll probably have to review that, but I know that when, in terms of electricity costs, I have seen a decline in the electricity cost due to solar panels.
Was it worth the $5 million to do, or we don't know yet? How long has it been up?
Don't know yet. Yeah, it would require a more thorough analysis. I've never done that or participated in that before, so.
We have a guarantee from the individuals that install it. We have a guarantee from them. If we don't meet a certain criteria for savings, they will offset that deficit.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know anything, not to my knowledge, about that right there.
Well, that's an easy thing to find out, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's only for this building, it's not a whole lot, but you know, hey, every little bit will count, right?
You guys have any questions?
Current moment for me.
Looking at a 5-minute break, and then we'll start the council meeting.
Yeah, I need a good 5-minute break.
Okay, it is currently 8:06. We'll take a 5-minute break.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Where do I, Curtis?